Today, I will be showing you how I have created this stock trading analyst that will give you a full detailed analysis for the short and long term. Besides that, it will also give you a sentiment analysis and it will give you two charts for the long term analysis. I will first do a quick demo to showcase you what kind of results you can expect from the stock trading analyst. And after that, I will show you how you can create it yourself. Okay, so we will type in our stock and it will be Microsoft for this demo. So Microsoft, then we can go to our n8n. Once we are in n8n, we can execute the workflow. So we'll execute workflow. Then we can see that our message is received. We will first scrape all of the candlestick data from Yahoo Finance. Afterwards, we will create the short-term analysis. Then we will move on to creating the long-term analysis. And when we have created the long-term analysis, we will create the sentiment analysis. And with the sentiment analysis, we will see if the market is bullish or bearish. And the sentiment is based on the news that is going on right now. So after we have created the sentiment analysis, we will combine all of the data. Then we will create the final analysis that we will send to Telegram. And after we've sent the message to Telegram, we will create the charts that are for the long-term analysis. So for the 1 day and for the 1 week candlestick data. Okay, so as we can see, the workflow is finished. So let's go to Telegram and see what it has done. Okay, in Telegram, we have received the analysis and we can see that it is for MSFT, which is the ticker for Microsoft. Then we get a summary of what the analysis is about. We can see that the analysis date was done on 2025, 6th of June 29. After the short summary, we will get the major risks and catalysts. So here we can see exponential overbought RSI on long-term charts raised as of corrective pullback. Then after the major risks and catalysts, we got the short-term analysis. So here we have first a summary of the short-term analysis, and then we move on to the trend. So this is 50-minute candle data from the last 7 days, and this is a downwards trend. And then we have the 1 hour candle data from the last month, and this is an upwards trend, so that is good. Then we have the support, the resistance level, volatility. Then we have the average volume, and then we go to the technical summary of the short-term analysis. Then we have the RSI of the 50-minute candle data from the last 7 days. This is a 31.6, and this is a bit oversold, negative for the price action, and could imply bounce setup if shift occurs. After that, we have the RSI for the 1 hour candle data from the last month. This is a 53. This is neutral, slightly positive for momentum carry. After the RSI, we'll move on to the MACD. After that, we have the M20. So this is also for both the 50-minute and 1 hour. Then we have the volume trend, the key pattern. After the technical summary, we will have the short-term trading plan. So here, for example, we have the trading plan for the 1 hour and 1 month. Here we have the bias is bullish. Then the entry price is $495.94 with a stop loss of $453.03 and then the take profit on $504.28. Okay, so after the short-term trading plan, we will have the key observations, and in the key observations, you will have the volume spike and the unusual gaps. So here we can see if some bar really spiked really high or if it dropped really low. After the key observations of the short-term analysis, we will move on to the conclusion. So here I have the conclusion of the short-term analysis. After the conclusion, we will have the sentiment analysis, and the sentiment analysis is only for the short term. And sentiment is based on the news from the last 30 days. And that is also why it is only for the short term, because the long term is for the last 5 years. And then it won't be really efficient if we use this sentiment for the long-term analysis. Okay, so in the sentiment, we can see that the category is positive, the score is 0.6, and that the bias is bullish. And then we have the rationale, and this is just a quick summary of why the bias is bullish, bearish, or neutral. After the sentiment analysis, the short-term analysis is done, and now we will move on to the long-term analysis. So for the long-term analysis, we will first start with a quick summary, and afterwards we will go on to the trend, the major support, the major resistance, the 52-week high and the 52-week low. And this is different from the short-term analysis because we didn't have it in there. And then we have the average daily volume with the volatility ATR. And if you see, these indicators are based on the 1-day candle data from the last year and from the 1-week candle data from the last 5 years. So this is different from the short-term analysis. After these indicators, we will move on to the technical summary for the long-term analysis. So here we have the RSI, the MACD, the MA50 instead of the MA20. And then we also have the MA200 instead of the MA20. So this is just a bit more expanded. And then we also have the volume trend. And after this technical summary, we have the long-term trading plan. So this is first for the 1 week and 5 years. So here we have the bias, which is neutral, entry price as $495.94. then the stop loss as 195.27, and a take profit at 504.29. Then the positioning sizing will be smaller than 1% of the portfolio per trade. And after that, we have the key observations with the volume spikes again and the unusual gaps. And then after that, we have the conclusion of the long-term analysis. So after the conclusion of the long-term analysis, we will have the next steps and actionable alerts. And these are some actions that you could maybe look at as an indicator. So here, for example, we have if 15 minutes/7-day oversold RSI turns up with strong bounce, consider short-term reversal trades. And then the only thing that we have left are the charts for the long-term analysis. So here we have the chart for the 1-day candlestick data from the last year. So here we will first have the chart of how it went, then the MACD and the RSI level. And this is for the 1-day and the last year. And then we also have for the 1 week and the last 5 years. And it is exactly the same as the chart that I just showed you. So this is the result that you can expect from your AI trading analyst. And now I will show you how you can build it. So let's go to n8n. Okay, so now we are in n8n, and one last thing before we really start, I just wanted to say that this video is non-financial advice and that this AI agent that I'm showing you is just a tool that you could use for your analysis, and you should not fully rely on these results that you can expect from this AI agent. So just use it as a tool and as an indicator, and then do also your own research on this stock before you do any actions. Okay, so this AI trading analyst starts with the Telegram trigger, and here we will receive the message. So in the Telegram trigger, you will first add your credential, and then you will put the trigger on message so we can receive text messages. Here you can see that the message that we have received was Microsoft, and this was the stock that we have typed in. After this Telegram trigger, we will send the data to a HTTP node, and in this HTTP node, we will research the stock that we have sent in the Telegram, and we will send it to Yahoo Finance, where it will find all kinds of data about the stock, and then it will send this data back to us so we can use this to later on scrape the candlestick data. So in this HTTP node, you will do your method on get, and then the URL will be this, so you can just copy this part. And this green part is the JSON, and this will be the text, so you can drag this behind the part that you have just copied. So I will paste it in here. After you did that, the URL is set, and then the authentication will be on none. And then send query parameters, send headers, and send body will all be turned off. If you have set up everything right, then you will receive this data. So here we have the short name. This will be Microsoft Corporation. Then we have the symbol, which will be MSFT. So this will also be needed for later on when we are going to scrape the candlestick data. And then we have some more information about this stock. After the HTTP node, we will send the data to a code node where we're going to verify all of the data that we have just received. And then we will change the ticker, so MSFT, to all uppercase because this is needed for later on with the candlestick data. So in this code node, you will do a language of JavaScript, and then the JavaScript will be this. So it is a small JavaScript. So here we can see that we have received all of the data that we have just gathered. Then we will check the ticker, and then we will change it to all uppercase. And then that will be it for this code node. After the code node, we will send the data to a set node. In the set node, we will set the ticker so we can use this for later on in our workflow. So in the set node, you will do a name of ticker. So here we have ticker. And then the JSON data will be JSON.ticker, and this will be the output data from the code node. So here we will drag this in here, and then the string will be on a text. And then everything is set up for the set ticker node. After the set ticker node, we're going to scrape all of the candlestick data. And this is for the 15-minute candle data from the last 7 days, from the 1-hour candle data from the last month, then from the 1-day candle data from the last year, and from the 1-week candle data from the last 5 years. And these two are for the long-term analysis, and then these two above are for the short-term analysis. And we will first do the short-term analysis. So here in this HTTP node for the 15-minute candlestick data, we will have a method on get, and then the URL will be this. So we're going to send the data to Yahoo Finance, and then we're going to enter the ticker, and this will be the ticker from our set node. So we'll put it in here, and then the thing that you have to change is the interval. So the interval for now will be on 15 minutes because that is the candle that we want to scrape. And the range will be from the last 7 days because we want the data from the last 7 days. And then the authentication will be a none. Send query parameters will be turned off, and these two will also be turned off. And if you set up everything correctly, then you will receive this data. So here we have the data from the last 7 days with all of the candlestick data. And we need to use this later on in our short-term analysis. After we've received all of the data from our HTTP node, we will send the data to a code node. And in this code node, we're going to calculate all of the indicators that we have just went through in our analysis. So we will first do the language on JavaScript, and then the script itself, we will first gather all of the data. So we'll get the data, we will get the metadata, the close, the open, the high, the low, the volume, and the timestamps. This is all of the data that we have received from our HTTP nodes. And after this, we will calculate the RSI. So here we will calculate the RSI. Then we have the MACD. Then we have the n8n plus the slopes, the volatility. Then we have the support and resistance. We have the trend, the volume trend. Then we have the key patterns. Then we have the volume spikes. Then we have the unusual gaps. Then we have the bias, the entry price, the stop/targets. And then we have the output object, and this is the output structure of how it should output all of this data. And this is obviously a very big script, so I will put this script freely available in our free Skool community. So you can just download this as a resource and you can just enter it, and then everything is set. Okay, so now we are done with this code script, and now we will move on to the get 1 hour candle data from the last month. So we'll first receive the data from the HTTP node. This is almost basically the same as we did with the 15-minute candlestick data, but the only thing that you now have to change is the interval, which will now be on 1 hour instead of 15 minutes, and then the range, which will now be on 1 month instead of 7 days. So this will be the only changes that has to be made in this HTTP node. After we've received the data from the HTTP node, we will send it to the code node, and in the code node we're going to calculate the indicators. And it is also almost exactly the same as the analysis for the 15-minute candlestick data, but the only thing that you have to change is the time frame and the time period. So here we have the time frame, which is now be on 1 hour instead of 15 minutes. And then we also have the period, which will now be on 1 month. And then in the calculations in here, it will have to be changed to 1 hour and 1 month. But I will just also put this script in our free Skool, or you can just put this whole script in ChatGPT and say change the time frame and the period to 1 hour and 1 month. So now that we've calculated all of the indicators, we will merge the data in this merge node. So in this merge node, we will do mode append. So we'll append all of the data. And then the number of inputs will be 2, because we only have 2 inputs. After the merge node, we will send the data to a code node. And in this code node, we're going to add short-term data to all of the data that we have just combined. And this is needed because now we have just structured it on a proper way, because afterwards we will also combine the data with the long term, and then we do have to know where the data is from. So if we do this with the short-term data, we know that this data is from the short term, and then we also know later on that the data is from the long term. So in the code script, we will do type short-term data, and then the data will be the input from our merge node. So now that we have calculated all of the indicators and named all of the data as short-term data, we will now actually create the short-term analysis. And we will do this with the AI agent, and we will first connect our OpenAI model. So this OpenAI model will be GPT 4.1. So in the AI agent itself, we will first give it a user message. And in this user message, we will say, here is the short-term market data for JSON-data.name. So this will be Microsoft Corporation, as we can see here. And then we will give it the ticker. So this will be MSFT. And then we have the short-term data. And for the short-term data, you cannot immediately drag the data from the combined short-term data node in here, because then you will get object, object, object. And this is obviously not what we want. So we have to form it as a JSON.stringify. And this is obviously all of the data that we need for our analysis. After the user message, we will set the system prompt. So here in the system prompt, we will say, you are a professional stock analyst assistant. You receive structured JSON with 2 objects. So here we have object 1, which will be the 50-minute candles from the 7-day range. And then we have object for 1 hour candle data with the 1 month range. Then we'll say always clearly mention the time frame and period for every metric in the summary. So then we will get it like this: 50 minutes, 7 day. 1 hour, 1 month. And that is obviously what we want, because otherwise we do not know what the indicator is showing us. And then after that, we have followed these steps and formatting rules. So we have the context sentence, and then we give it an example. So this is just the summary of how it went and what the short-term data is all about. And then we will move on to the short-term outlook table. So here we will form the data for the trend, the major support, then the resistance, the volatility at the ATR, the volume SMA5, and then we move on to the technical summary. So in the technical summary, we will have the RSI, the MACD, the n8n, the volume trend, and the key pattern. And all of these indicators are just immediately being pulled from our calculation that we already did in our code node, so we don't have to fill in any calculations in the system prompt itself. After the technical summary, we will move on to the short-term data trading plan. So here we will have the bias, the entry price, the stop loss, the take profit. This is for the trading plan for this 15 minutes from the last 7 days. And then we have the trading plan for the 1 hour and the last month. And this is exactly the same as for this one here above. Then we'll add a parameter where we'll say in one concise line, explain how these values are determined, referencing trend, RSI, MACD, support/resistance, and rules. Then we'll give an example of how it should output this concise line. After that, we will do the key observations. So this will be the volume spike, the unusual gap, the volume spike, and the unusual gap. So this is both for the 15 minutes, 7 day, and 1 hour, 1 month. Then afterwards, we will have the conclusion, and this is just a quick summary of all of the data that is being mentioned in the analysis. And then we will give it output rules. In the output rules, we have all numeric outputs rounded to decimals. Here we say never invent data or conclusions. Everything must be derived directly from the input JSON. And then if a metric is missing, state non-assessed. All metrics must be clearly mentioned, the interval and range used. And then we gave it some more output rules in here. After that, we will give it a output format. And it is very important because then our system prompt knows on how it should give the short-term analysis. And this will all have to be in markdown format because this is needed for our Telegram to be in a nice structure and in a nice format. So here we have format the report in well-structured markdown, clearly using bold for headers and clearly bullet/line separations for each metric. Never use a markdown table, only use the given output format that is used in the example. And then we have the example output structure, and it is basically exactly what we saw in the demo when we went over the short-term analysis. Now, the last thing that you have to add is that you give it the time. So this will be JSON.now because otherwise it will not give the exact date of when the analysis has been made. So now that you have added the system prompt for this short-term analysis agent, we can see that we've received this output. So this will be the whole short-term analysis, and we will have to use this later on when we are going to create the final analysis. Now we went over everything for the short term, and now we'll move on to the long term. By the way, this workflow will also be free to download in our free Skool community. So just go in there, take the resource, and then you can get this whole workflow for free. If you liked this video so far, then do not forget to like and subscribe. So here we have the get 1 day candle data from the last year and the get 1 week candle data from the last 5 years. And we will first do this one. So you have the HTTP node for the 1 day candle data. This is also almost exactly the same as for the 1 hour candlestick data and from the 15-minute candlestick data, because the only thing that you have to change is the interval. This will be on 1 day, and then the range will be on 1 year. And then we will receive all this data with the candlestick data. Okay, and then we'll send this data to this code node. And here we're going to create all of the indicators for the long-term analysis. And this is a bit different than for the short-term. So in this code node, we will first obviously have to collect all of the data just as we did with the short-term. Afterwards, we will calculate the RSI, the MACD, then we will calculate the n8n and the n8n, and this is already different than with the short term, because with the short term we only had an n8n instead of an n8n and 200. So this is how we calculate it in here. Then we have the n8 slopes, volatility, support and resistance, the 52-week high and low, and this is also different than what we did with the short term because we didn't have this with the short term. Then we have the trend, the volume spikes, unusual gaps, the bias calculation, then the entry price, and then the stop loss/take profit. And then we also give it the output structure on how it should return all of the data. And this script will also be freely downloadable in our free Skool community, so you can just grab that resource from there. Okay, so this is everything what we have to do to calculate these indicators. Now we'll move on to this HTTP node where we're going to grab the data from the 1 week candle data from the last 5 years. So in this HTTP node, you will change the interval to 1 week and the range to 5 years. After the HTTP node, we will send the data to the code node. And in this code node, the only thing that you have to change is the time frame and the period, because the time frame will now be 1 week instead of 1 day, and the period will now be 5 years instead of 1 year. So this is what you have to change, and you will also have to change it within the script here. So you can just send this script to ChatGPT and ask it to change this time frame and the period, or you can just grab it from our free Skool community, where I also put this resource in here, so you can just easily access it. Now that we made all of the calculations for the long-term analysis, we will merge the data again. So here we will merge the data. So we'll do append, and then the number of inputs will be 2 because we only have 2 inputs. After the merge node, we will send the data to the code node, where we will combine the long-term data. And this is exactly what we did with the short-term data. So here we will just append the name, so we know that the data is from the long term and that we know that the data is from the short term. So in this script, you will do type long-term data, and then the data will be input all. So this will be all of the input from the merge node. After the code node, we will send the data to an AI agent. So here in the AI agent, we will first have to add our chat model, and this chat model will be GPT 4.1, exactly as with the short-term analysis. And in the AI agent itself, we will first add a user message. So in this user message, it will also be, here's combined market data for Microsoft Corporation and MSFT. So this will be the ticker and the name. And then for the long-term data, you have to do it as a stringified JSON. So you can just copy this expression in here. After you have set the user message, we will now set the system prompt. And in the system prompt, we have said, you are a professional stock analyst assistant. You receive structured JSON with 2 objects. And the objects are now 1-day candles with 1-year range, and then 1-week candles with 5-year range. After the object, we have the exact expression as with the short term. So we say always clearly mention the time frame and period for every metric in the summary. So then we get the 1 day and 1 year and 1 week and 5 years. So we know where the data is from and which indicator they are talking about. Then we have the context sentence with an example. We have the long-term outlook table. So here we have trend, support, resistance. We have the 52-week high/low in here, the average daily volume, and the volatility/ATR. Then we have the technical summary. In this technical summary, we have the RSI, the MACD, the MA50, and the MA200. Then we have the volume trend. Then we have the long-term trading plan. And then we have the key observations. So these are the key observations that are being made, such as the volume spikes and the unusual gaps. And then after the key observations, we have the conclusion, which is just a quick summary of all of the data that is being talked about in the long-term analysis. Then we gave an example, and then we also gave it some output rules, which are almost exactly the same as for the short term, but there are some differences. Then we have the output format. So this is exact statement as what we use in the short term analysis, that it has the output everything in markdown. And then we have the example output structure. And it is also exactly what we saw as with the demo when we went over the long term analysis. And then we gave it the JSON.now, so our agent knows what time since date it is. So now that we have created the short and long term analysis, we will now create the sentiment analysis. And in the sentiment analysis, we will see if the market is bullish or bearish. So the first thing that we have to do for the sentiment analysis is getting all of the news from the web from the last 30 days. And that is what we will do in this HTTP node. So in this HTTP node, we will do a method on get, and then the URL will be this. And here we're going to scrape all of the news from Yahoo Finance about the ticker that we have been mentioned. So the ticker will be Microsoft, and you will put it behind this URL. Then the authentication will be none and everything will be turned off. And then you will receive this data if you set it up properly. So here we have the data with all of the titles of the articles and just a quick body of what is being talked about in the articles. And we have to first filter all of this data, because now it is a lot of tokens that we're going to send to our AI agent, and that is not what we want, because this is just not cost effective. So in this code node, we're going to filter the news articles, and then we will get this output. So we have headlines with all of the headlines. And if you put it in the schema, you can see that all of the headlines will now be listed. And we only actually need the headlines to create this sentiment analysis, because this is already good enough for our AI agent to decide whether the headline is negative or positive. And that is the only thing that we need to form this sentiment. So after we have set up the code node, we will send the data to this OpenAI message and model. In this OpenAI message and model, you will first add your credential, of course, put the resource on text, operational message and model. Then the model will be GPT-4o mini. And 4.1 is good enough because the model only has to decide whether the headline is positive or negative. So it doesn't have to do any special calculations. So in the system message, we have, you are a highly specialized, accurate sentiment analyzer for financial markets, focused on actionable short-term insights for stock traders. Then the task is analyze the overall sentiment of the following list of recent news headlines for a stock. Your goal is to determine the likely impact on the stock's short-term short-term price actions. Then we gave it requirements such as use only the information from the provided headlines and your expert market understanding, classify sentiment as positive, neutral or negative. Then we gave it some do nots. So here we have do not use HTML for the output except for the markdown tags as in the example. So here we have if any value cannot be determined, write non-assessed. Then we're going to give the system message all of the headlines that we just filtered in our code node, but we cannot immediately drag it in here because then we'll just get one big headline as we can see here. So here are all of the headlines just put under each other. And that is why we have to make this expression that we see here. And that will give us the output that we see here on the right side with all of the bullet points of all of the headlines. So then our system message can properly give it a negative, neutral or positive sentiment. After the headlines, we set output in strict markdown, matching the format below. Do not use a code block, do not use JSON. Then we gave it the example output, and this is just the template of how it should output all of the sentiment data. Then we gave it a note. If a number is a percentage, then add that to the number. And if a number is a price, then add $1 to the number. Then we also gave it the JSON.now, so our sentiment analysis AI agent knows which time/date it is. And the last thing that we have to do is turn on simplify output, and output content as JSON has to be turned off. And if you then set up everything correctly, then you will get this output as we see in here. Okay, so now we have set up the short-term analysis, the long-term analysis, and the sentiment analysis. And now we're going to combine all of this data. So we'll make a merge node in here, and in this merge node we will do append. Then we'll do number of inputs 3 because we have 3 inputs, and then the merge node is set up. After the merge node, we will send the data to the code node, and here we're going to list all of the data. So here we have the short-term analysis, the long-term analysis, the sentiment analysis, and that is it for the code node. And then you will receive this output in here. And in the schema, you can see we have the short-term analysis, long-term, and the sentiment. After the code node, we will send the data to our AI agent where we're going to create the final analysis. And we will first have to connect the chat model. And the chat model will be GPT 4.1. So in the AI agent, you will enter a user message. In the user message, we have the short-term data, the sentiment, and the long-term data. And for the short-term, you can just drag it in from the code node. So here you can see that it will turn green and it will be exactly the same as in here. And you have to give it all of the data, so the long-term, short-term, and the sentiment. Then we have the system prompt for the AI agent. And the system prompt is going to be, you are a professional trading analyst and report generator for financial markets. Your task is to analyze, provide technical and sentiment data for stock and produce a structured markdown report for clients. You always follow the exact formatting and examples shown below. Do not skip or combine any sections. Every section and heading must be included even if the data is missing. Then we gave it some instructions, so the executive summary, then the major risk and catalyst, short-term data. Then here after the short-term data, we have the short-term trading plan, then the key observations, the conclusion, the sentiment analysis for the short-term. And we only have it for the short-term, and that's also what I explained in the beginning of the video. Then we have the long-term data. So here we have all of the long-term data. Then we have the next steps and actionable alerts. So here we have clearly stated what the reader should watch for or do next. And then we have the sources and disclaimer. So we have listed data sources. So for example, Yahoo Finance, AI analysis, and remind that this tool is non-investment advice. Then we gave it the example output, and this is very important for this AI agent because this is the final analysis that we eventually will get in our Telegram. So here we have the example output. This is the total summary of the whole analysis. We have the analysis date, the major risk catalyst. So here we have the short-term data. That's also what we use when we have created the short-term analysis. So this will just be the same format in Markdown. So then we have the technical summary, short-term trading plan, etc. Then after we have the sentiment analysis. This is also going to be the same structure as that we did with the sentiment analysis structure. Then we have the long-term data, and that's also exactly the same. Then after that, we will have the output rules for this AI agent, and this will be for the key observation, only give the biggest volume spike and the most unusual gap. Then we also have all numeric outputs round to 2 decimals. If a metric is missing, state non-assessed. All metrics must be clearly mentioned. The interval and range is used. No generic fluff, only precise, actionable insights. Then we have the output format, which will be format the report in well-structured markdown, clearly using bold for headers and clear bullet/line separation for each metric. Never use a markdown table, only use the given output form that is used in the example. And that's also really important to mention because if you do not mention that you do not want a markdown table, then it maybe will give all of the metrics in a table, and that will not look nice in your Telegram message. And then the last thing that we have to do for this AI agent is giving it a date. So we will do the analysis date is always now. After you've entered the system message and you've added the user message, then you will get this output. So here we will see the output from this AI agent. So now that we have created the full analysis, we will now send the message to our Telegram, but because the output of the full analysis is pretty big and has a lot of characters, we have to split the message in two, because Telegram has a character limit per message sent, and that's why we're going to create this code node. So in the script, we will enter this code. Here we will have input text.length divided by 2, but you can also do it, for example, divided by 3. And if you set up everything correctly, then you'll get this output. So here we have block number 1, and we'll scroll down, here we have block number 2. And that's only what we have because we only split it in two. Now that we have split the Telegram message, we can now send it to Telegram. So I will add a send message Telegram node. And in this Telegram node, you will first add your credential, put the resource on message, and then operation will be on send message. The chat ID will be from your Telegram trigger. So it will go back all the way down. And here in your Telegram trigger, you will get your chat ID. So you can drag it from here into the chat ID, and then that is set. And then the text will be the output from our Telegram message split. So this will be the content, and you can just drag it in here. And then your Telegram message is set up. Now that we have set up this Telegram node, we can now send the full analysis to our Telegram. And now the only thing left that we have to do is creating the charts. So to create these charts, we will first need to get the correct date. And the correct date is very important because otherwise the timestamp of the chart won't be accurate. So to set this time, we're going to create this code node. And in the code node, we have created this script. And in this script, we have format date get full year is -1. So this will get us the last year, and that is obviously what we want. After you have entered this script, you will get the output from 2024-06-29, which is today, a year ago, and then you will get to 2025-06-29, which is today. And then your script is set correctly. Now that we have set the correct dates, we can now create the actual chart, and we will do this by sending the data to the HTTP node. And in this HTTP node, we will do method post, and then the URL will be this URL, and this is going to be a chart from api.chart. So let's first go to that website. So here we are in chart-image, and here we're going to create our charts for our stock analysis. So in here you will create your account, so you will sign in, and then here you get sent to this page, and this is going to be the pricing page, and you can just stay on the basic plan if you want. But then one thing is very important with this basic plan is that the max resolution is 800 by 600, and this means that your chart can only be this resolution. And this is one important thing because our chart for the last 5 years is bigger than 800 by 600. So if you stay on this basic plan, then the full 5 years of the long-term analysis won't be in one chart. And a fix of this is just by going to the Pro plan, because here you will get the max resolution of 1920 by 1080, and then the full 5 years will be visible in one picture. Okay, so after you have selected your plan, you will get your API key, and the API key can be found by going to API keys in here, and then you will get sent to this page, and then you will press on generate new key. So you press on generate new key, then you will copy the key, and then we will go back to n8n. We are back in n8n, and in here we can see that we have turned on send headers, and then specify headers is using fields below. And then the name is going to be X API key, and here we're going to enter the value, which is the API key that you've just copied. So we'll enter it in here. After you have entered the API key, you will turn on send body. Body content type will be on JSON, and then the specified body will be using JSON down below. So here we will have our JSON script that is needed to create the chart. And in here we have the theme. So my theme is dark. Interval is 1 day. This is the candlestick data. So it is from 1 day candlestick data. Then from is going to be the from the correct date that we have just created. And then the to is going to be the correct date that we also just created. The symbol will be the ticker. So this will be the ticker that you have also set previously in this workflow. After you've entered the symbol, so the ticker, you will enter the studies. So the studies that we have entered are the volume, the MACD, and the RSI. And if you want, you can also change these studies, but in my experience, these are the most useful ones. After you've entered your JSON script, you will turn on the options. You will enter response, and then these two will be turned off. The response format will be on file, and then the put output in field will be chart-image.png.1day. And here we can also see in the output that we have created the chart. So as we press on view, we see that this is the chart of the 1 day candlestick data from the last year. And now we only have to send it to Telegram. So I will add a send photo message Telegram. So you'll first add your credential. Resource will be on message, And then the operation will be on send photo because we want to send a photo. And the chat ID will be the chat ID that we have also found in here. So it will scroll all the way back down in your Telegram trigger and then it will drag your chat ID in here. After you've entered your chat ID, you will turn on binary file because we want to send a binary file in here. And then you will do input binary field will be chart-image.png.1day. And this will be this title in here. So if you have changed it, they will change it to that name, but just make sure that it is exactly the same as you have in here as in here. Once you've done this, your chart will now get sent to your Telegram. So now we are going to create the chart from the 1 week candlestick data from the last 5 years. So what you will do is just copying this code script of the get the correct date and we will enter it in here. And the only thing that you will change is changing the -1 to 5 because now you want to get 5 years back instead of 1 year. And if you did that correctly, then you will see now from 2020 06/29, which is the day of today 5 years ago, and then to 2025 06/29, which is today. Once you have set the correct date, you can now send the data to a HTTP node, and this HTTP node will exactly be the same as the one here above. But in this HTTP node, you have to change one slight thing. So first of all, this will all be the same. And then in your JSON script, you will have to change the interval to 1 week instead of 1 day. And that's the only thing that you have to change. You can also change the studies if you want. But for me, the studies are just the same as I did with this one above. And for the rest of this, it is exactly the same. But the put output in field, because this will now be 1 week instead of 1 day. So the title is different. Now, the only thing left that we have to do is sending the chart from the 1 week candlestick data in the last 5 years to our Telegram. So what we will do is copying this send photo message node and entering here down below. Then in the Telegram node, you will change the input binary field to chart-image.png.1week, or exactly the title as we have above here. And then everything is set, and then you can now send your 1 week chart to your Telegram. So this was a tutorial on how you can create the stock trading analyst. If you have a question, then leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.